You hear that? Tight, crisp, punchy drums that cut through the mix. That's what you want when you make Dancefloor drum and bass. Hi, I'm dim.bolt. Today I will show you how to make Dancefloor drum and bass drums in the style of sub-focus or dimension that I made in my latest track, My Biggest Mistake. Let's go. So we will go through 5 steps in order to do this, and each of them are very important. And the first one is get the right groove. So drums in Dancefloor drum and bass are actually very simple. Even though they are the center of the track, they need to give a lot of space for the other elements like the bass or the melodies. So the pattern that we will use is a classic 2-step drum and bass pattern with a kick on the first and the third beat, a snare on the second and the fourth beat, and then a hi-hat every 4 or 8 beats. You can layer the hi-hats like this, and you have pretty much all the groove here. Here the hi-hats are doing this pattern. Why? Because you will hear that the bass is doing the same pattern, and it will give the emphasis and the power to the rest of the track. You can also add some cymbals or some rides to add some groove to the elements. You will feel the top end of the track, and it's great to have that bright sound. All together it sounds like this. Here you see that I removed some of the hi-hats at the beginning of the drop. It's because there is a bass hit at this moment and I didn't want it to clash with the rest of the track. Remember that you need to keep it simple in order to make the other elements like the bass or the melodies to shine. Second step is picking the right samples. Most of the work truly comes from here. You need good sample in order to have a good result. For the kick, I use the short and punchy kick that doesn't have too much sub on it, and the transient will give you the nice click that cuts through the mix. For the snares, you can try to have multiple layers of the snares, but it's more difficult, and if you want to have a more easier time, you can go for a sample that sounds good like this. If you use FL Studio, there is a cool feature that allows you to try many sounds, so you need to press Shift and down. It will automatically change the sound from the library. That's pretty cool if you want to try a lot of new ideas. So the rule here is to have really full sounds, big snares, big kicks, but they need to be very short as well, because if they tend to be too long, they will take too much space in the mix. If you want some recommendation for good drums, you can try the Fox Stevenson, Tantrum Desire or Shock One drum and bass packs. They're really good. Bonus tip, you can move a bit the pitch of the snare to make it fit if it doesn't fit. Make sure to not overdo it though, because it will lose a lot of power as it stretches it down. Once you have your pattern and your sound, you need to make sure that they sound good in the rest of the track, and that's why you need the third step, sidechain. In Dancefloor drum and bass, the kick and the snare needs to really resonate in the club or in a festival. So sidechain is really cool because whenever the kick or the snare will play, all the other elements will go down in volume. So there is a ton of techniques to sidechain a track, but I will show you what I use and what works for me. So here I have really tiny part of a hi-hat. You cannot even hear it. So here, for example, we have the sidechain for the kick, and this tiny bit plays only when the kick plays. So here on the first and the third beat. Then I send it to a mixer. Here it's called Ghost Kick, and here you can see that it is linked to the bass and the synths. So how did I do that? Just pick your mixing track, right click on another track and select sidechain to this track. Here I add a limiter with this setting, you can copy it. And what really matters here is the sidechain, the number. So I have 2, one for the kick and one for the snare. And also here, the threshold, knee and ratio. Only the 3 things and you're good to go. So in order for you to understand, let's play just the kick and the bass and you will hear the result. So here you can see that every time the kick plays, it ducks the volume of the whole bass, so there is only the kick that plays. If I remove the sound of the kick, you will hear it more in detail. You can reduce the threshold for the intensity of the sidechain that you want, and also change the knee or the ratio. So this is before and after. You can now hear how there is a lot of space for the drums to play, so it will not clash with the other elements, and when you hear it in a club, that's when you hear that boom da. Then we can start to mix every individual drums. So I don't like to put a lot of effects and a lot of mixing into each individual tracks because one, I'm super lazy and I don't have the time to spend 40 hours on EQing a snare. And secondly, I think that if you did the good job on selecting the good sound, you won't need to spend a lot of time. That being said, I use only 4 things on my drums. 1, volume, 2, EQ, 3, saturation, 4, compression. They are in the order of importance for me. First, the volume. You can see that here the volumes are very different and very well selected. For that, I recommend you to use reference tracks in the same style that are well mixed, and it will help you reaching the right volume that you want. Then and only then the volume is right, I can put some EQ to change a bit the tone and the characteristic of each element. Here it will really depend of your original track. Keep in mind that you need to make it sound full. So if it's lacking a certain part, it's maybe because it's too much in another part. So it needs to act like a balance. If you adding something, you need to remove a bit of something. Then sometimes I use saturation to make the sound even more big and even fuller. And at the end you have compression or limiter. Here I didn't use it on any of the single elements, just I used a transient shaper here that will not load unfortunately, but it acts kind of as a compression, so all the drums they sound like this. And then the final touch is bus processing. So here the tracks are regrouped into bus. We have the kick and the snare that go into a full bus of dry drums. Then we have all the hi-hats that goes into the full breaks, and all of them go into a parallel compression, which means 2 tracks are playing at the same time, but one is really processed, and they go in a full bus, which is a drum bus. So there is individual elements, subgroups, big group. So when you add a little bit of saturation on the hi-hats, for example, you don't want to add it in the kick. So it gives you a more flexibility. Here I use the same processing as I told you before, EQ, saturation, compression, but here I go a bit more on the saturation and the compression to really make it glue together. So without the effects on the hi-hats, it sounds like this. And with the effects, it sounds like this. You hear that it really glues them together and it removes the frequencies that we don't want. And you can see that it's really, really simple. I have 1 EQ to boost and 1 limiter to just make sure like it's really heavily compressed. Then, as I told you, we have a parallel compression, and here the drums are really smashed together and make them like really crunchy. It's really low in the mix because we don't want to overpower that. We just want to have that feeling that it's crunchy. And to finish, we have the full drum bus with a bit of EQ again, some saturation. I use this plugin, but you can use your stock plugin, and EQ again to remove a bit of the highs. So without the effect drum bus, it sounds like this. And with the effects on the drum bus, it sounds like this. You can hear how it glue everything together with just a few things. Here are my easy steps to follow in order to make good dance floor drum and bass. It might seem simple because it is really. If you have watched the whole video until here, I want to thank you truly because it's been a while that I haven't made a video, and I want to thank you by giving you a few secret tips. Don't over-process individual hits and let the bus do the work. Humanize your hats and rides like a real drummer playing. Reference track with a plugin like Ozone to save some time. Here you can load reference track and play them so you can hear A and B of the track and your track and his track, And finally, don't overlayer things if it doesn't work at first. Unfortunately, it's not because you will add more stuff that will sound good. That's it for this video. If you liked it, please give it a good thumbs up. It helps with the algorithm and it will show that I can make more videos like this. If you like the track, it's available now in the description down below. You can check out my new EP, My Biggest Mistake, with 4 new completely tracks. Something that I really loved making. It's a bit liquid, it's a bit jungly, it's a bit dance floor, it's very bright, it's very energetic, it's very euphoric. Thank you if you watched this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.